There just are only so many things that can be done in a school day. Just can't constantly keep putting things on.
People that sit in ed tech boardrooms just think, well, it's only education, how difficult can it be?
I don't think there is a problem with pausing, but there is a problem when you stop.
Who actually owns student data?
And that is probably quite dangerous.
It's an impossible job, and I don't think that phrase is used often enough.
I would like to see in the future not a fear of AI.
Oh, look, thank you. Thank you for meeting with me today. It's effectively just an opportunity for me to meet with and learn from passionate and knowledgeable educationalists. If it's okay with you, Chris, I'd like to start with an introduction and to see if you want to correct me on what we've put together
Okay,
by way
go
of
on then.
introducing you. Okay. So you're the founder of Meta Pedagogy, advising school and MAT leaders on practical AI strategy. And your background is unusually grounded for an AI consultant with more than 20 years in middle leadership across MAT schools, including digital transformation, governance, teacher development, curriculum reform, and particularly work to increase girls' participation in STEM.
Oh, wow. You've done your research.
Is that
Made
okay?
it sound very good as well.
Yeah.
I think that the thing with the girls in STEM, it's something that I find incredibly annoying that there are still, when I was at uni, four four girls in the class. I did some training last year with a trainee teacher. There were four girls in her class,
Mhm,
and it's years later.
mhm,
It's just not acceptable.
mhm. Would it be true to say that your central argument is not whether schools adopt AI, but whether leaders create the capability, safeguards, and culture to use it well?
Yeah, I think that would probably be true for most of what I do. It's important, I think, that schools are using AI technology, but in a safe way, and to make sure that they're using it for students' cognitive learning, not just the sort of producing of documents, and using it as a way to help them learn. And that goes
Mm.
towards planning the curriculum, planning, we need now to be thinking about completely redesigning our curriculums so that they can be used with AI helpers really for the students.
Yeah, I completely agree about it being part of the journey and not the destination. Otherwise, we're only scratching the surface of its use, really. So you and I both share something quite personal. Both dyslexic.
Yeah.
You've said or believe that this is part of what drew you to AI. How did your early experiences of education share your belief in what this technology could potentially do for learners and for teachers, of course?
I wasn't diagnosed. I know you was diagnosed later as well at school with dyslexia. I was diagnosed later on while I was at college. I think now with the technology that we've got, it's a massive advantage, I think, for anyone that's got any neurodivergency to be able to use that technology to help them. That can be a really powerful thing. I think, especially with something like dyslexia,
Mhm,
for me,
mhm,
it's incredibly empowering to be able to do a mind dump really onto AI and get it to sort of organize it for me and then look back and go, oh, actually, yeah, like, I can look at this now and I can structure it properly and you're using it as a thinking tool. So yeah, I think technology in that way is a really empowering tool for anyone that with neurodivergency. Obviously at school there wasn't really stuff like that for me. There wasn't really anything like that while I was at uni either, really. It was just a matter of just slogging through it and getting it done. And now it's ever
mhm.
such a lot easier.
Yeah, yeah, just get it done. That's what you're constantly telling your own brain to do. Um,
Yeah, just get it done.
I
I mean, at uni, like, it's part of uni culture in it to pull that all-nighter and, nowadays it is a lot easier, and I'm sure students still do that, but I think that the technology nowadays has moved on, especially with AI. It's so much more helpful.
A lot of the experience is that you described there about the mind dump and about being able to come back to it. I'm more dysgraphic than dyslexic. My specific difficulty is, I think, called colloquially like blank page syndrome, where if I sit in front of a Word doc or an empty exam paper to put a response into, I find it very difficult to take it from here into
Yeah,
words, and especially to do that under time pressure. I've got lots of memories of childhood of sort of like teenage age of saying to mum, I've got this history essay, it's on this, we've got to write X amount of words. And she'd say, what's the question? Okay, what do you want to write about? And can stand in the kitchen and say, well, it's quite straightforward. There are four key arguments. However, whilst the first two would point towards this, the third one challenges that slightly because of this, and the fourth one does this. So probably in conclusion, and I remember people just saying, "Well, just write that down." And
it's so hard.
it's never the same, because doing it verbally, I think, is the reason why I didn't get diagnosed till I was 22. But if there was ever a conversation about, well, how are you getting on? I would have always given the impression that everything was fine. It was only then when I kind of had to do it with a gun to my head, the gun, being the clock and the piece of paper in that sense,
Yeah,
but I couldn't do it. So then it just looked like I couldn't be bothered. So for me, using dictation into
yeah,
notes, it's just like mind blowing for me. It is a brand new world for
yeah,
me to live in. I can talk at a dictaphone for half an hour and then put it back into an essay. And of course, I'm a pedant, so I will go back to that essay and I'll be, well, that's not right, and I'll change that comma, and I will tweak to the absolute nth degree. So it will be my work when it comes out, but it's verbally mine as the catalyst, and that just, yeah, makes such
yeah.
a difference.
I've looked you up as well, actually. So I found out that you had built the concept version of EFO in Excel
Mhm.
yourself. What did doing that, so building it yourself, teach you from what a funded version of it would have not taught you?
Oh, that's a good question. It's funny now that when schools or colleges use EdenFiftyOne or EFO, it's version 6. That's what we currently call it. It's version 6, and there'll be a 6.1 update at Christmas, or 6.2 in March. In truth, the Excel version probably did 200 different versions of trial and error, of speaking to teachers about things that they wanted it to do and how to make it work. I think the thing that I probably learnt the most, the version that I made at the beginning, I thought, well, this is great, this is it. That version was only based on my experience and my ideas. And whilst I'd done lots of different head of English roles in different contexts, in different places, it was still only one person's platform. And so the thing that it probably taught me the most is that you're never finished. If you listen to what people want, and if you actually want to work collaboratively with users, it's never finished. It's always evolving and refining. We've actually got a feature on called Build Together, and teachers, leaders, learners can suggest things in that toolbar, and then they can upvote each other's ideas. If you can see that you suggested something, or one of your students or your head teacher or line manager, whatever, has suggested something, and then you log back in, it's like it's got 36 votes, and then we've taken the card over one stage to go, yeah, okay, we can do that. I love that, because we can congratulate that person for, thanks for making the platform even better. I like the idea of not just having by teachers for teachers as a slogan by big technology companies. I am a former English teacher. I was head of English. I still do intervention teaching and teacher training. I like the idea of having a genuine community platform.
Yeah, I think that, created by teachers for teachers thing, it gets a bit overused.
Not to put too fine a point on it, I do think that education is more of a toy for people outside of education, more of a political football or just something that everyone thinks they can have a go at. I don't think they do the same in medicine, in law, in
Yeah.
in finance, in the other professions. You don't often get I mean, it might be my echo chamber or my network, but I think because people went to school or because people have children that attend school or people that sit in ed tech boardrooms just think, well, it's only education, how difficult can it be? If we've got an idea to engage kids, so let's go for it. I think it's very patronizing because it is a profession. And, a profession I'm proud to have spent so long working in and continue to work in. And I think the idea of just strap lining a product with something like that I think it's quite offensive.
And it is
Yeah.
a massive political football education. Everyone wants to have a go. Politicians will put stuff in their manifesto that they think is good, and sometimes it is, but sometimes I think it's getting to the point where there just are only so many things that can be done in a school day
Yeah,
and only so many hats that teachers can wear in
absolutely.
a normal school that you just can't constantly keep putting things on.
And sometimes I think the elephant in the room is that when you actually put it down onto paper and you run the numbers, it's an impossible job. And I don't think that phrase is used often enough.
I think as well, like you want to help all the students that are in your class. You want to, make sure that as soon as you stop delivering information to them, they're doing their task. You want to make sure that that task is appropriate for everybody, and sometimes it isn't. Sometimes you have to modify that for different students. Sometimes if you deliver it wrong, you get half the class, you've got to go back and start again. Even then, there'll be someone with their hand up. You can't go round.
No.
You've got 60 minutes in most schools,
Yeah.
30 students in a class. That's 2 minutes each,
Yeah.
not including the delivery and the register and
And
all
then,
the rest of it. There just isn't enough
no.
time.
And if you map the maths and present it in front of somebody, there's nowhere for people to go. Chris, I'm going to ask you a question a bit more about the present and now like specifically about AI. I know that
Okay.
a lot of your work sits in the gap between guidance like KCSIE, the Keeping Children Safe in Education, and what is actually happening in classrooms.
Yeah.
What would you say is the single biggest mistake that school leaders are prone to making if they panic about AI?
Panicking,
Mhm,
probably banning, stopping,
mhm,
saying no, refusing to think about alternatives,
mhm,
and that is probably quite dangerous. The panicking stops you thinking about it properly.
mhm,
So there are massive advantages with AI,
mhm.
but there also are big problems that you need to mitigate. And you need to be able to do that in a safe and sensible way, not just for staff, but for students as well. And if you're panicking and not thinking about it clearly, then you can make quite a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
And sometimes that doesn't go as well as it could, because then everybody just tries to find a way around it, especially the kids and the teachers, to be fair. They'll just find ways around it. They'll use their own accounts. They'll do all sorts of things.
I agree. The
That
panic, the panic ban.
Yeah, I think clear, precise guidance on what you expect and enforcement of that guidance sounds like really strict, but
I agree.
being able to make it clear to staff that that is exactly what you expect them to do, and having the ability to listen to them, because sometimes you'll put something in place that is ridiculous. It sounds really good to you, sounds really good to your leadership team, and then you do it with the staff and they're tearing their hair out. And you need to be able to look back at that and go, oh, actually, we need to modify this. We need to keep this document fluid. And I think the fluidity of the documents that you are creating for the implementation means that you can make those changes. And having said that, you need to make sure that there are sometimes things that aren't negotiable, like uploading personal data and breaking GDPR and all the rest of
Yeah.
that. But in general, a lot of the rules can be flexible as long as you are sensible and using it for your own context rather than just some sort of generic setup that you've downloaded off the internet or something like that.
I know of a number of schools locally that have done the same, that have just banned sort of pending update kind of thing,
Yeah.
just to pause and think, let's come back to this as fast as possible, but for the moment, let's ban.
I don't think there is a problem with pausing, but there is a problem when you stop, and you go, oh, that's we're just not going to. I've seen a few schools pause to look at what they actually need for their school context to create some sort of strategy and vision where they can see clearly what they want in the next few years
Mhm.
and then go back and start to plan that and create a strategy for that vision so that they're working towards something, and that
Mhm.
is a good thing where you've got your vision. I want my school in 5 years time to be able to do these things.
Yeah.
I've got a further vision, maybe 10 years, this is what I want to eventually go for. But this sort of knee-jerk thing where, oh, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that, that's a problem.
Yeah.
You need to have a clear idea of where you're going and a strategy of how you are going to get there. And that is normally what makes it successful. So, where does EFO beat teachers' judgment and where doesn't it?
Well, that's a great question. What tends to happen in English teaching in marking and assessment, and it's nobody's fault, and it's perhaps why this doesn't exist outside of EdenFiftyOne. If you have a room of 10 teachers and you've asked them all to mark a paper 2 section B out of 40, it would be highly unlikely for any of those teachers to have the exact same number out of 40.
Yeah.
You will have someone with 32, somebody else might be up to 36, somebody is down to 28, somebody who's a bit harsh, somebody who's a bit lenient, a handful of people that are in the middle. But having been in exam standardization and moderation meetings for 20 odd years, there's never a room of people that does that. And that's because in English, you are always looking at a bag of things all at once. So if you look at a question, in that question level analysis, which is great in maths, great in science, because the question has a specific identity. In section B of an English language paper out of 40, there are so many different things that you're looking for. How do you just wrap them all up and go, that's the summary? That's the 1-digit summary as a grade, or that's the 2-digit raw score summary of all of the things. And assessment objectives are the same. An assessment objective is a bag of skills. So by breaking everything down into its most granular and formative form, which is the individual skills, you can provide a feedback just on one thing at a time. And in the conversations and meetings that I've been part of and led, if you're just talking about a student's punctuation around the table, you can agree. If you're just talking about a student's use of sentence structure, paragraphing, or evidence embedding, it's easier to agree. When you start asking everyone to put all of the skills in and provide a summary that goes on top of it, that's where I think you have
Yeah.
all of the subjective difficulty. So we break every single skill down into individual pieces and then traffic light them. We're the scales on the piano, whilst teachers choose the passionate sheet music that they want to play and teach.
Do the students understand that they're just working on that one skill? Do they get that holistic view?
Yeah, so they work on one skill at a time, but they can see that every time one skill improves, it improves writing holistically. And writing improves their EFO score, which is their literacy proficiency, holistically. So just by tweaking one red, same punctuation, up to yellow, will then improve writing overall, which improves literacy overall. So it's a very, very granular four-tier traffic light system for students to work in and own that development process.
Sounds very, very kind to the students.
In your forthcoming book, The AI Ready School, talks about leadership, policy, and safeguarding together. If we fast forward a couple of years and we walk into a school that's got it right, what is the most exciting change that we see in how teachers teach and how pupils learn?
I would like to see in the future just not a fear of AI, somewhere that everybody is confident and well trained, not just the teachers, but the support staff, everybody. Hopefully, in the future, we'll see software that the teacher sets up, but the students learn individually from. So they're paced at their own, or the software paces them at their own pace. It goes back and checks on the gaps in their knowledge. It makes them think about what they're deciding. As far as the teachers are concerned, lesson design is more structured. You design the holistic version of the lesson that you want, and then you deploy it to the students, and they work at it at their own pace. And that means that the student in the classroom that's struggling, you can go and help them. The bright one can speed ahead. They can think about their own learning. There is no reason why students in the future, even at school, can't look at that and go, actually, I'm interested in this particular thing. I've done my work. Why can't I
Yeah.
then go and look up, and the AI can then look at that and go, actually, yeah, I can tell you loads of stuff about this particular thing. And that breeds children that are interested, that want to learn, that want to find out things, curiosity, thinking about it critically as well, not some sort of idealistic view of, oh, yeah, this is all going to be wonderful.
I think that idea of access to information and that exploration of understanding and an excitement that comes with that. I can find this out. I can find out more about that. Is in some ways obvious, but in other ways a highly underrepresented benefit of AI.
Where do you think that the sector is kidding themselves about AI?
The number one thing I think we should be talking about is who actually owns student data.
Mm.
In paper terms, we take that very seriously. The ring binders and the files that are, locked and double locked if it's got the EHCPs and all of that information. There is no higher prioritized GDPR than when young people and vulnerability are involved. And yet, I think people unfortunately do not truly understand the rules around and the complexities around where data is actually stored, where data is processed, and even more importantly than those two things, who owns that data.
Yeah.
And this is something that we saw in the TikTok ruling quite recently. Just because something is processed in the UK doesn't mean that it's owned in the UK. Far greater efforts should be made to actually unpack and explain to school leaders and to parents actually what data ownership really, really means.
People just, I think, don't realize what goes on behind the scenes in, with data processing, where it is, who owns it. It could be processed here and owned elsewhere. That's a sort of massive problem for anybody, isn't it? Really,
Owned
not just schools.
owned always wins. And
Of course
so
it does.
if you're an ed tech company, you say, "Oh, it's okay because your data is processed in London," the school goes, "Oh, that's okay. That's only 5 miles away or 50 miles away." It's effectively rented accommodation. It's not the locality, it's who owns the infrastructure on which the data is processed, and that
Yeah.
is something that leaders really need to know.
The terms and conditions of these companies are deliberately complex
Mhm.
to the point where no one really knows exactly what's going on. Sometimes I wonder if they know themselves. These big tech companies, I'm always bashing them. But yeah, I think they have a lot to answer for with the way that they make it deliberately complex.
Of
They know
course,
exactly what they're doing.
of course, of course. It's been absolutely wonderful to talk with you, Chris. I'm gonna ask you final thing. How do people find you other than LinkedIn in terms of email or website? Is there anything that you want to share in case people are watching this and they think really want to get in touch with you?
I think the best way to find me is to DM me on LinkedIn or to email me at admin@metapedagogy.co.uk, and that's go straight into my inbox. So,
Wonderful. All right,
all right.
I'll make sure we put that up at the bottom so that it's on.